There's been a big outbreak of coronavirus cases in northwest of Tasmania, forcing the authorities to shut a number of health services. This is really alarming.
The Premier has taken decisive action in circumstances that required it. There's been a cluster around the hospitals on the northwest coast. We've had new cases, 11 of them yesterday. 8 of those were health workers from those hospitals, and 32 out of 33 have been linked to the Northwest Hospital in the Northwest region. So looking down the Northwest region is the right thing to do. Decisive action by a decisive Premier, and let's hope that they're able to cleanse and deep clean the hospitals, and the workers that have to go into 14 days isolation with their families. It's a great burden for them, but I trust that they'll be able to bear it, knowing that they're doing the right thing by their community.
Have you had any kind of briefing from the authorities about whether there will be enough access for health services? It's a very remote part of the state, and that's going to be a cause for concern to anyone who does become ill.
I understand that the emergency section will be opened again within the next 72 hours, so that will continue. And of course, we've got the rescue helicopter and the air ambulance service. But of course, this is a very difficult time for the people of the Northwest Coast, and as a Tasmanian Senator, and I'm sure all Australians would join me in keeping them in our thoughts and prayers at this exceptionally difficult time for them.
And what do you make of this discussion? If we can turn to other topics of the day, Cardinal George Pell is doing an interview with Andrew Bolt, his first worldwide interview after being found not guilty of those historical child sex abuse charges. Do you think that this is going to be a time for reflection on the state-level approach of this, in particular in Victoria?
Or the Victorian Police, Director of Public Prosecution and judicial system have a lot to answer for. The High Court was about as emphatic as you ever get a judicial body. 7-0 in a united 30-page judgment that they all signed off on. Very decisive, and basically saying that they were of the view that it may well be that an innocent man had been imprisoned. And I would have thought anybody that had done criminal law 101, knowing that you have to prove a case beyond reasonable doubt, it's not just about believing the complainant, it is about proving it beyond reasonable doubt. The evidence never stacked up, and I've got to give Andrew Bolt full credit. He was one of the people that stuck with George Pell throughout this and predicted what must happen if justice were to be served, and he's been exonerated but vilified along the way like you would not believe. And I think the High Court has spoken very well. And if I were the Victorian Premier, I'd be having a look at my police service, the Director of Public Prosecutions and the judicial system, because clearly there is a big hole in that system now, having been blasted by the High Court 7-0 30-page judgment, which just basically destroyed the prosecution case. And might I say, completely supported Mark Weinberg's dissenting judgment in the Court of Appeal in Victoria, a 200-page tour de force which tore apart the other two judges' judgments. But that, of course, included the Chief Justice of the Appeals Court, and so one wonders where the judicial system currently is in Victoria. Very concerning for anybody that believes in the rule of law.
It could be open to George Pell to pursue compensation for wrongful conviction, the time he spent in jail over 400 days. Do you think he should do that?
Oh, look, I don't want to pass comment on that. They're matters for his grace to determine as to his future actions. But, for somebody to have spent 404 days in jail in circumstances that he clearly should not even have been prosecuted is a matter of concern, and something that he may wish to pursue, but completely up to him. That said, I would have thought on the strength of the High Court judgment, he may well have a very strong case to do so. And that is why the Victorian government should be looking very closely at its law enforcement and judicial system.
You have a colleague in Parliament, a Tasmanian colleague, Peter Whish-Wilson, who's faced a lot of criticism for going to his shack for quarantine. Now, this is at the time when he's been spotted out and about after coming back from Canberra, when he's supposed to be staying home, staying put for those 2 weeks. Do you think he has some questions to answer about his behaviour?
I don't want to cast any judgment on it, but I would have thought he does have some questions to answer. Hopefully he can answer them in a manner that is acceptable and passes the pub test, but I thought it had been made very clear that amongst all the things you should not be doing is going to your shack over this period. So what he was doing there is for him to explain, but on the face of it, not a good look. But having commented as I have on the George Pell matter, you've always got to give the benefit of the doubt to the other person and allow Senator Whish-Wilson to produce his defence as to why he has done what he's done. But on the face of it at the moment, it doesn't look good.
And just finally, this is a time in the Christian calendar, most sacred time of the year, so it has brought a focus back onto religious freedoms in particular. Do you think that there will be any move on this, or is this locked away until coronavirus pandemic's over?
I would have thought religious freedom will be on the back burner for the time being. The Attorney-General, who has been excellent in this area, has a huge task in the area of industrial relations at the moment. We know that workers are doing it exceptionally tough. There will need to be variations to awards, and the approach taken by the Fair Work Commission has been working exceptionally well with the ACTU and employer groups. And in fairness, that does need to be the focus. But that said, religious freedom is a fundamental freedom enshrined in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. It does need protection in Australia. So let's hope that 2021 will be the year when those religious freedoms will be enshrined in our legislation, and so that people like the Tasmanian Archbishop no longer has to face the sort of trauma that he had to for simply teaching the Catholic Church's teaching on marriage.